Before we dive into this wild ride, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? I love hearing just how far these Karen tales of chaos and karma can travel. The morning started with the kind of stillness that only suburbs can fake. Birds chirping, sprinklers ticking, and the illusion of peace that made you forget how quickly it could all shatter. I was sipping coffee, scrolling through emails, when the pounding began. A hard, deliberate fist against the front door, followed by shrill voices echoing through the neighborhood. Open up. You can't ignore us forever. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I could already picture the floral shirts, the self-righteous glares, the clipboards clutched like weapons. Rachel and Lauren, the self-appointed guardians of the HOA. Two sisters, both around 40, both as loud as leaf blowers and twice as irritating. I opened the door halfway. Rachel, the blonde one with a spray tan that could blind traffic, pointed at my garage. You've got blue tape across your door frame. That's not HOA-approved paintwork. Lauren, the brunette with a permanent squint and a smug smile, scribbled something on her clipboard. We'll have to report this violation immediately. I stared at them, trying to decide if this was a bad dream. It's painter's tape, I said evenly. Because I was painting, which is kind of what tape is for. Rachel crossed her arms. You're not allowed to change colors without committee approval. I sighed. It's the same color, Rachel. Lauren smirked. We'll see about that. They strutted off the porch like they owned the place, heels clicking on concrete, perfume clouding the air with synthetic lilies. I closed the door and exhaled slowly. It wasn't the first time they'd harassed me, but it was the first time I felt something sharp twist in my chest, an edge of anger that didn't fade after the door shut. I'd moved here for quiet. I'd worked 16-hour shifts for years to afford this house, this patch of normalcy. But ever since the day I'd moved in, the Karen sisters of Maple Drive had made it their personal mission to break my peace. They were the type who believed their HOA title gave them divine authority. They measured lawns with rulers, photographed driveways, and argued over mailbox heights like it was national policy. Every week, some poor neighbor got a warning notice tucked under their door. Mine had become a favorite target. First it was, your lawn looks uneven. Then your garbage bins are visible from the street. Then your Christmas lights were left up too long. But nothing compared to the day I caught them in my garage. It was a Saturday afternoon. I'd just come back from the store, holding a grocery bag when I noticed the side door slightly ajar. Inside, Rachel and Lauren stood near my workbench, pretending to inspect paint cans. I froze in disbelief. What are you doing in my garage? Rachel turned as if I'd interrupted a city council meeting. We had to check if your supplies were HOA compliant. That blue paint isn't on the approved color list. Get out, I said sharply. Lauren gave me a tight, patronizing smile. No need to get defensive. We're just doing our job. I stepped closer. Your job doesn't involve breaking into my property. They left in a huff, muttering something about uncooperative residents. I stood there long after they'd gone, heart pounding, hands trembling. I'd never felt so violated in my own home. When I reported it to the HOA president, he shrugged. They mean well, just trying to maintain standards. That night, I replayed the garage camera footage on loop, watching them touch my tools, open drawers, walk around like they owned the place. Lauren even waved at the camera before leaving. The arrogance in that small gesture burned itself into my memory. Weeks passed, and the harassment continued. They sent fake violation slips, accused me of storing debris when I left recycling boxes on the porch, and knocked on my door just to complain about the shade of my blinds. Every time, I told myself not to react. That's what they wanted, to provoke me into doing something that would make me the villain. But patience only stretches so far. One Thursday afternoon, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from my security system. I opened the app, and my blood went cold. There they were, Rachel and Lauren, standing inside my front entryway, snapping photos and rummaging through my mail pile. My heart pounded as I watched them on screen, narrating their own invasion like it was a guided tour. See? He's hiding non-HOA approved fixtures behind the door, Rachel said. Lauren chuckled. He thinks we won't notice. I spoke to the footage under my breath. You've got to be kidding me. I drove home that evening ready for war. They were sitting on the sidewalk near my house when I pulled up, gossiping like nothing had happened. I walked straight up to them. You broke into my house today, I said quietly. That's trespassing. Rachel rolled her eyes. We were conducting an inspection. Of my living room? Lauren smirked. We had reason to believe you were hiding paint samples. I took a deep breath, holding my anger down like a lid over boiling water. If you step on my property again without permission, I'll call the police. Lauren laughed. Go ahead. We'll just tell them you're hostile to the HOA. Rachel leaned forward. You might want to remember who approves your exterior remodels, neighbor. They stood, brushed invisible dust off their shorts, and walked away. I stood there on my porch, hands clenched, the air buzzing in my ears. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street, and for the first time, my home didn't feel safe. That night, I watched the footage again and again. The camera showed Rachel waving at the lens like it was a game. The same smirk. The same audacity. I could almost hear their laughter in the silence of my living room. I sat there for hours, the glow of the monitor painting my face in pale light. Every rational part of me said to let it go, to file another report, to stay civil. But something deeper pushed back, something tired of being trampled, tired of pretending civility worked on people who had none. I opened my toolbox, running a hand along the cold metal of my wrench, the screws, the nails. My eyes landed on the leftover paint cans, bright blue, the very color they complained about. A plan began to take shape, slow and deliberate. It wasn't violent, it wasn't illegal, but it would be unforgettable. Outside, the night hummed softly. I stepped onto the porch and stared at the door they loved to bang on so much. The wood was solid, smooth, and ready. For the first time in months, I felt calm. As I unscrewed the hinge plate, a faint smile crept across my face. The same kind of smile that appears when you realize justice might finally come, not through rage, but through precision. The house was quiet again, peaceful, but not the fake kind. The kind that comes before something big, something blue. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The idea had settled overnight, sharpening into something precise and deliberate. I wasn't going to yell, argue, or file another useless complaint. I was going to let gravity and arrogance do the work for me. I started with research. The internet was full of creative deterrents for trespassers, motion-triggered sprinklers, sound alarms, dye packs. But I didn't want noise or chaos. I wanted something poetic, something that would stain their pride as deeply as it would their clothes. When I saw an image of a paint trap meant for raccoons, non-lethal but unforgettable, I smiled. The symmetry was perfect. Blue paint. The exact shade those sisters had obsessed over. Too bold for the neighborhood, Rachel had said. Unprofessional color, Lauren had added. The color that started it all would be the same one that ended it. That evening, I stopped by the hardware store. The clerk raised an eyebrow when I carried 2 gallons of bright cobalt blue to the counter. Big project? He asked. I smiled. You could say that. Back home, I pulled my tools out with the precision of a craftsman. Measuring tape, wire, a pulley hook, and an old metal bucket I found in the garage. I tested the weight, calculating the angle at which it would tip. It had to work flawlessly on the first try. There wouldn't be a second chance. I drilled a small bracket into the frame above the door and ran a thin nylon cord from the bucket handle to the doorknob. The mechanism was simple. Twist the handle too forcefully, and the bucket would release. It was almost poetic in its simplicity. Violence triggered not by me, but by their own impatience. I poured the paint slowly, the smell sharp and chemical. It glistened under the porch light like liquid sapphire. I tightened the cord, adjusted the bucket's balance, and stepped back to study my work. My heart thudded once, heavy and certain. To test it, I used an old broomstick. The moment I pulled the handle, the bucket tipped perfectly. The paint splashed downward in a wide arc, coating the door in dripping blue streaks that shimmered under the light. I couldn't help but laugh softly. It was beautiful. I spent the next hour cleaning up, resetting the trap, and positioning the security cameras. One above the porch light, one in the doorbell, another discreetly behind a flower pot. Multiple angles, each recording in crisp 4K. When the time came, I wanted every glorious second captured. By midnight, the setup was perfect. The bucket was refilled, the paint line was taut, and the bait, the door, looked perfectly normal. I went to bed with the strange satisfaction of an artist who knows his masterpiece is complete. The following day, I left for work earlier than usual, though I didn't actually drive far. I parked my car 2 blocks away beneath a maple tree, engine off, phone in hand. Through the security app, I had a live feed of my front porch. For the first hour, nothing happened. Just the usual neighborhood calm, dog walkers, delivery vans, the rhythmic sound of sprinklers. But around 10:30, movement flickered on the screen. There they were, the Karen sisters, marching down the sidewalk like twin storm clouds, clipboards ready, lips pursed in synchronized disapproval. Rachel was in her usual bright white floral top, her hair sprayed to perfection despite the heat. Lauren followed beside her, expression pinched, tapping something into her phone. I could hear their voices faintly through the audio feed. "He didn't fix that trim yet," Rachel said. Lauren replied, "If the HOA won't handle it, we will." They stopped in front of my door. Rachel placed her hands on her hips, scanning the entryway like a general inspecting enemy lines. Lauren leaned in, peering through the window glass. "See? Same illegal blue door. He didn't even change it," she said. Rachel scoffed. "We'll handle this ourselves. I'm documenting the violation." I leaned closer to the phone screen, breath held. The camera's red light blinked quietly. Lauren reached for the doorknob. "If it's unlocked, that's on him," she muttered. Rachel nodded approvingly. "Let's get inside and take a photo." The world seemed to slow. Lauren twisted the handle, pushing with confidence. Then it happened. A hollow metallic clink broke the silence, followed by the unmistakable sound of liquid cascading downward. Whoosh splash. The blue paint exploded over both of them in a tidal wave of color. It hit Rachel first, drenching her hair, splattering across her face, streaking down her floral top until it looked like melted art. Lauren stumbled backward, squealing as the paint poured from her shoulders down to her knees, thick and sticky, coating every inch. They screamed in unison, pure shock and fury twisting their voices. Rachel blinked through dripping blue streaks. "What did you do to us?" Lauren wiped her eyes with trembling hands, only smearing the color deeper. "He set a trap. This is vandalism." Across the street, a young couple walking their dog froze mid-step. The man stared, then burst into laughter. The woman pulled out her phone, recording the spectacle as paint dripped off the sisters' chins onto the porch floor. Rachel stomped a foot, sending droplets flying. "Stop laughing. This isn't funny." The couple only laughed harder. Through my phone, I could see every detail in perfect clarity. The paint gleaming under the sun, the sisters' floral outfits ruined, their hair stiff with cobalt streaks. It was everything I'd envisioned and more. Then came the best part. The bucket, now empty, swung lazily from its hook above the door, still dripping occasional beads of paint that plopped onto their shoes. The camera captured Rachel's horrified stare as she realized it had all been recorded. Lauren tried to storm off, but her sandals slipped on the wet porch. She fell to one knee with a wet slap. The neighbors across the street gasped, then resumed laughing. "Don't touch me," Rachel shouted, flinging paint off her hands. "He's going to pay for this." I whispered to myself in the parked car, "You already did." The sisters eventually stumbled off the porch, leaving blue footprints down the sidewalk like guilty evidence. Their once perfect composure was gone, replaced by the chaos they'd created. Every step they took marked another trail of humiliation. When they disappeared from view, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like an hour. My phone continued recording the empty porch, the sun glinting off streaks of paint like victory ribbons. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Not until I saw how far the ripples would travel. That afternoon, I downloaded the footage and backed up twice. The sound of their screams replayed through my speakers, sharp, indignant, beautiful. I trimmed the video down, each frame crisp and damning. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I laughed. It wasn't cruel or angry, just relieved. For the first time, the balance had shifted. They'd wanted control. They'd gotten consequences. I leaned back in my seat, eyes on the phone screen, watching the porch slowly dry in the sunlight. The paint bucket swayed gently in the breeze, still hanging like a trophy. And as the last drop fell to the floor, I knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, the neighborhood was already buzzing before I even stepped outside. Word traveled fast in Maple Drive. But this was different. There was a hum in the air, an electric kind of gossip that fed on embarrassment. I scrolled through my phone, and there it was, a video posted in the local Facebook group titled, HOA Queens Turn Blue. Someone had recorded the entire paint debacle from across the street. It already had hundreds of reactions. The thumbnail showed Rachel and Lauren, mid-scream, dripping cobalt blue. I pressed play. The footage was shaky, filmed on a phone, but the laughter in the background made it perfect. "Oh my God, look at their faces," someone said off camera. I watched Rachel's mouth open in horror, her voice distorted through the speaker, while Lauren stumbled, shrieking as the bucket swung above her head. I could barely hear their words over the laughter. By noon, the clip had spread beyond the neighborhood. People shared it on local pages, group chats, even a meme page titled HOA Horror Stories. Every post carried the same energy, glee mixed with disbelief. I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, pretending to be just another amused spectator. My neighbors waved and grinned as they passed, some stopping to chat. "Did you see that video?" one man asked. I shrugged. Hard to miss. "They had it coming," he said, chuckling. About time someone stood up to them. I smiled faintly, letting the conversation die there. Inside, I felt a strange calm, not pride exactly, but satisfaction. The kind that comes when the universe, for once, aligns in your favor. By late afternoon, the sisters finally emerged from their house. They looked scrubbed raw, faces tight, voices sharp as they muttered to each other. Rachel's hair had a faint bluish tint even after all her scrubbing. Lauren's arms were blotched where the paint hadn't fully come off. They moved quickly, heads low, avoiding eye contact with every neighbor who dared peek out their windows. Still, their arrogance hadn't died completely. At 5:30, I saw them marching toward the HOA office, clipboards clutched like shields. I watched from a distance, camera feed open on my phone, ready for the next act. Inside the small community office, I imagined the confrontation unfolding like a courtroom drama. They would enter loud, self-righteous, and dripping with indignation. I pictured Rachel slamming her hand on the desk. "We demand that he be fined. He assaulted us." The HOA president, Mr. Parker, a tired man in his 50s who'd long stopped pretending to care about petty disputes, would look up from his paperwork. "Assaulted you. With paint." Lauren would shout, "He set a trap." Then Parker would lean back, gesture to his assistant, and say, "Play the footage." And there it was, my doorbell camera, clear as daylight. The sisters approaching, discussing handling it themselves. The door opening, the paint falling, the silence afterward, followed by the screams. Their faces frozen on the screen, expressions of pure guilt and disbelief. When they finally returned home that evening, I didn't have to imagine the outcome. Their shoulders sagged, movement slower, pride crushed under the weight of public humiliation. The HOA had suspended their inspection privileges indefinitely. Official notice. Trespassing violation. Their reign of terror ended by their own hands. But karma wasn't done yet. That night, a new version of the video surfaced, edited, trimmed, and captioned by someone with a wicked sense of humor. It opened with dramatic music, zooming in on their painted faces with captions like, "When HOA power trips go wrong." The comment section exploded. Thousands of laughing emojis. HOA Enforcement Unit, reporting for blue Tiefel duty, one read. Neighborhood Smurfs caught trespassing, another said. By morning, the clip had gone viral. 500,000 views. People from other towns were sharing it, using it as a meme for overzealous neighbors. Rachel and Lauren disappeared from sight for 2 days. Their curtains stayed drawn, their driveway empty. The only sign of life was the faint shadow of someone scrubbing the porch floor, trying desperately to erase the blue stains that refused to leave the concrete. I almost felt sorry for them, but only almost. On the third morning, I walked out to get the mail. The air smelled of rain and fresh-cut grass. Across the street, a few neighbors were chatting, still laughing about the incident. The couple who'd recorded the first video waved at me. "You should have seen it live," the woman called. "It was like a movie." "Glad I missed the splash zone," I replied, and they laughed. I opened the mailbox and found a folded note with no envelope. Inside, written in shaky pen strokes, were the words, "You'll regret this." No signature, no address. But the handwriting was familiar, tight, furious loops. I folded it once, tucked it into my pocket, and smiled to myself. Threats were all they had left now. That evening, I repainted my front door, still blue, but darker, richer, like the calm after a storm. I worked slowly, deliberately, savoring the quiet. No interruptions, no shouting from the street. Just the brush gliding over the wood, the smell of paint thick in the air. When I finished, I stepped back and admired the color under the porch light. It glowed faintly, deep and defiant. For the first time since moving here, the house truly felt like mine. Later, I sat outside with a beer, watching the street. A light breeze carried the faint sound of laughter from the park. Across the road, Rachel and Lauren's house sat in uneasy silence. The porch was cleaner now, but the faintest tint of blue still clung to the edges of the railings, a ghost of their mistake. A car slowed as it passed, someone pointing at the house and laughing. The sisters' curtains twitched, but no one appeared. Their empire of rules had crumbled under a single bucket of paint. I leaned back in my chair, letting the night wrap around me. The satisfaction wasn't loud, it was quiet, steady, earned. There was justice in letting people destroy themselves with their own arrogance. Before heading inside, I checked my cameras one last time. Everything was calm. No movement, no intrusions, just still frames of an ordinary neighborhood finally at peace. I deleted the footage, watching the progress bar crawl across the screen until it read complete. In the distance, thunder rolled softly, promising rain. I closed my laptop, turned off the porch light, and stood at the doorway, hand resting against the newly painted surface. "Some people only understand boundaries when they paint them themselves," I murmured. Then I smiled, stepping into the house as the first drops of rain began to fall, washing the street clean, but never quite erasing the blue.